we had about almost 35 people sign up. The important thing is the fact that you folks here get this training, and then please share it with others. Share the fact that this will be an ongoing training in future. Talk it up and try to get people to come here, because each and every one of us has a stakeholder in the chain here, has an obligation to take ownership of these problems that we're addressing now. Today, this program that's going to be put on by ISCCW as a component of their educational outreach here. CCROA and ISCCW, over the course of the last year, have really solidified a partnership and come together to address the problems that we have with invasives on our chain. By way of brief introduction, first of all, our ISCC biologist. Barb Gajewski is one of the biologists, and Bill Artwich is one of the other biologists. And Bill largely has been doing most of the surveying on Thousand Island Lake. We've got Nina Ferrucci here, which is the educational coordinator.
I would just like to get you a little bit more familiar with ISCCW. We are a nonprofit, started about 5 or 6 years ago, and it started out as just with biologists surveying, and just in 5 years it's grown to community outreach programs, such as we do things in the elementary schools, in the middle schools, at the Linda Lakes Library. Have you ever seen the free boat wash signs out at BP? If you've ever stopped, that's us. We have 2 washers, 3 boat wash employees that go to this boat landing, boat landings at Lac Vieux Desert, and a few others in the area. And that's been doing a lot. That's our main source of educating the boaters, because the boaters are the biggest impact to these invasive species. Barb will tell you more about why. But so education to the boaters and to the residents on the lake is the most important piece to the impact that we have on these lakes. And ISCCW is here to tie the link between the lake associations and the biologists, and what to do, the information, and so that's why we're here. All right, well, thank you for coming out.
Today we're going to primarily focus on what's out here, and that's Eurasian water milfoil and curly-leaf pondweed. I do just want to touch on a couple of other invasive species that are kind of knocking at our door. And once they do enter the lake, there's no management for them. They're there to stay. So then that's spiny water flea, Stormy Lake, the Guile Flowage, Lake Ogeebic, Lake Superior, I know, are some of the lakes in the area that have spiny water flea. And zebra mussels. There's quite a few lakes in the area, kind of further east here, that has zebra mussels. And those are transported mainly by water. So it's important to drain your water out of your boat, drain your live wells. In the state of Wisconsin, if you're caught with a live fish in a live well, you get a ticket. And I really like to fish, and I buy bait and I use bait, and one of the things that I like to use is a contained insulated bucket. I know for fishermen, minnows stay in this bucket, they never touch the lake water. They're insulated, can stay cool, and there's an aerator in it. It works great. So then you can, save some of your minnows, because once that minnow, if you have one of the minnow buckets with the drains, it dumps it into the water, technically those minnows have to stay there. And when you're done using that bait, you can't throw those minnows back into the water, you have to dispose them on shore or in a garbage can. So just some things to think about if there's any resort owners, or if you have guests coming up, and they want to go to different lakes and they have their minnow bucket ready to go, say, hey, by the way, if you go to, Stormy Lake, please don't bring that water back, because, they do have spiny water fleas, and once they enter a system, there's no cure for it. Today, we want to really know what this stuff looks like. So I have samples for everybody to look at. We have a sample, and these are for you to take home. It really creates a menace. Some quick features, like plant things to look for. Here's considered a whirl. A whirl is when more than 2 sets of leaves come off of a plant in one spot. Eurasian water milfoil, there's 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
But here's the key. If you have 12 or more leaflets on one side, it's suspect to be Eurasian water milfoil. Each one is
messages is northern have.
Oh, northern
They're going to
has
have
4
less
too.
than 12. Okay, less than 12 leaflets, but each is going to have a whorl.
But they'll have 4.
Yeah, they'll have
The
4.
whorl could be the same. Every once in a while you see it's not 4.
Then it's
How
something
frequent is that? No,
Different
it'll
plant.
always be 4? Okay.
different plant. There are 4 leaves to a
These
whorl.
are the leaflets.
There are 4.
So you can see here, there's
these are
4.
in a whirl of 4.
Some other key
Okay.
things,
When it's in
you're looking in
northern-
the water, you're not going to go, well, I'm going to pull up every plant and I'm going to count all the leaves. Internode spacing. The internode is the space in between the whorls. Typically in your Asian water milfoil, it's larger than your natives. In the springtime, this will have a red stem. Not always the best feature. Some lakes, they'll never have a red stem. But red stem, be suspect. Not a lot of other native plants other than your milfoils have a red stem. One thing that I really like to look at is when you pull it out of the water, look how wispy it is. It hangs. I mean, especially if you pull it out this way. Northern water milfoil is really going to hold its shape. Kind of like a Christmas tree out of water where this will just collapse on itself. Something that you won't find in the textbooks, but I like to use when you look at northern, the leaf itself almost looks like a Christmas tree. So it kind of comes down like this. Your Asian water milfoil looks like somebody came with a pair of scissors and clipped off the top. So it's flat. And that's not in a textbook. It's just something, looking in the water a lot for the last 10 years, this is something that I've kind of keyed out. Yeah.
Do the immature plants have the nuts on them also? Like the native northern?
It will create a flowering head as well. So the
Here's,
irrigation will,
yeah,
but it's
here's
not
a
as
little
common.
flowering head. This plant is primarily spread through fragmentation.
Before they're mature.
So a lot of times, depending on the year, they'll never produce seed. Seed spread is very rare. It's
typically they won't.
fragmentation.
You'll just see that
And all you
flowering
need
part.
to
Typically
do
when
to
they get to the
produce a new
surface, they'll start
plant
to create a flowering.
is basically have an internode.
A lot of times
So you can see
the
why
flowering
there's a
is much more
problem that a
common.
boat takes its motor
create that
through a
flowering
patch of Eurasian milfoil, just that.
This is all you need. So how many times can I do that on this one plant? Quite a bit.
Quite a few.
And it grows fast. On Langford Lake, when I did some work out there, this stuff grew maybe a foot and a half in less than a week in the early spring. So it grows very rapidly. It gets up to the surface. It canopies out. It's a recreational nightmare. I don't know if any of you have been on big sand back in the day when they had quite a bit. It's impossible to get your boat out. Once it mats out, it creates kind of warmer water temperatures underneath. And those warmer water temperatures are not good for fish. They're not good for aquatic life. They're not used to having those warmer water temperatures. When it senesces or when it dies back, it releases nutrients. It takes away oxygen, so you can actually have in areas a depletion of oxygen underneath the plants. You can have a pulse of nutrients. Pulses of nutrients create algae blooms. Algae blooms, we don't like to swim in them.
Someone mentioned that the species are melding together in some cases. Is that so? By that I mean they're hybrids.
Yeah. Hot topic. If you want to do research right now, you do it on hybridity.
You're saying that it can coexist together with the other native species.
I wouldn't say coexist, because then you're kind of living together in harmony. This stuff will outcompete your native species.
So this hybridization, are they finding that the hybrids are taking on the Eurasian milfoil characteristics of it being invasive?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes. And they're also finding that management-wise, you got to pay a little more attention to it.
Are they even
It's
more
not-
aggressive, maybe?
Some instances, it's harder to manage because it doesn't respond to product.
So
Product
like
meaning
most hybrids,
240 or-
like a hybrid then is going to be more resistant to what you currently have. So it's like spy versus spy, cat and mouse.
When we're out there today, hopefully we'll see some northern. I have some rakes. We'll gather native vegetation and we'll do some comparison, because once you start looking in the water, everything I told you might just go out the window, which is totally understandable. You guys have a lot of lookalikes, so. Curly leaf pondweed. Its life cycle is different than a lot of our plants. It's an early season opportunistic species. It starts growing underneath the ice. And as soon as the ice comes off, it shoots up to the surface and mats out. And if it's acting typical, meaning aggressive and invasive, it will mat out, and right around the 4th of July it'll senesce, so you won't even know it's there by August. Some systems it just hangs out and naturalizes. In some systems it's aggressive. It's one to be vigilant on, monitoring to say, well, this is kind of, we're to the point where we don't like having large surface mats in the springtime. As it decays, it can pulse nutrients. So that's another thing to consider. So it can exhibit very, very aggressive, invasive characteristics. Other lakes, I've seen it growing in with coontail, it just kind of hangs out. You treated Lindsley Lake for a few years, yes, because there was quite a large mat of it out there.
It seems with the north half of Cisco, anybody who puts a boat in there and goes down the chain is going to take it.
I mean, I found fragments of curly leaf in Thousand Island. I've never found it a rooted plant. Some years, it's like on Fishhawk, there's a lot of it. The next year, it disappeared.
Is this as invasive as the Eurasian milfoil?
My experience working in northern Wisconsin, Michigan, I'm going to say no. There are lookalikes. The best feature is the serrated leaf. If you want to hold it up to the light, you can see that there's these little teeth on the edge of the leaves. I would start with the lasagna noodle and say, okay, this looks suspect to me. Take a sample. If it doesn't have the serrations, it's not curly leaf. This, you can't tell that there's no serrations, but its common name is clasping leaf.
But if you look closely, you don't see.
Here's a good one. Here's a really good one. The leaf is, a little bit wider. These are the tips, so they're a little bit smaller. But
And it looks like it's pointier leaves.
yeah,
And there's no serrated
edges. And the leaf itself clasps around the whole stem.
Oh,
So
I
that's
see.
called
Yeah.
clasping leaf. Where this will attach on each side.
Wow.
So what's this one called? The lookalike?
Clasping leaf.
Clasping leaf.
We try and get wind-free, precipitation-free days. The ripple on the water is going to distort your vision. You're not going to be able to see into the water very well. So it's often early in the morning, late in the evening. You want the sun up so you can still see into the water well. If you are out and the conditions kind of deteriorate, use an underwater camera or an aquascope like this. It really cuts the waves down. You just put it into the water, and you can look down through the tube.